Hi guys! Have you ever heard about a person called Allan Turing? I know many of you have read about him, or studied him, or watched movies about him, because he is considered one of the most important people in the 20th century. Why? He developed the first modern computers and helped save millions of lives during World War II. Many engineers and many computer science students have had to study him and have recognized how important his contributions are. Unfortunately, he was arrested in 1952 and the British government forced him to receive chemical therapy to stop being gay. Sadly, many LGBT people around the world are still being forced to receive those kind of treatments today. Hello guys and welcome to a new unit of our English course. The name of this unit is From the Past to the Present because we're going to learn how to use, we're going to see examples of how we use tenses in the past that help us connect to the present. The objective of this lesson is to learn the difference between the use of the simple past tense and the present perfect tense, and we're going to do that talking about the life of Mr. Allan Turing, one of the most influential and important people in the 20th century. But before we do that, I want to review what is the difference between the use of the simple past and the present perfect. And the difference is actually very simple. We use the simple past to describe actions in the past that have an specified time in the past. We know exactly when the actions happened. We have something in the sentences or we have something in the history that tell us specifically when the action happened. We have a time expression. But in the present perfect, we don't have a specified time. We don't know exactly. We are not sure of when the action happened, either because the action is unfinished or because the action is repeated in the past. Now, let's talk about the life of Alan Turing. I'm going to give you some examples of activities that we know exactly when those actions happen. For example, Alan was born in London, England in 1912. When he was at university, he developed one of his most famous ideas, a universal computing machine to decode and perform any set of instructions. And we know that's why he is recognized as the father of modern computing. In 1939, World War II began, and Alan joined the British government's top secret code breaking department at Bletchley. Alan and Gordon Wellman invented an incredible new machine called the bomb, and they used it to decode the Enigma cipher machine used by the Germans. That gave Britain and its allies a huge advantage, and that's why they won the war. The code breakers' effort saved many thousands of lives, and we know for a fact that because of Alan Turing's contributions, the word was much shorter. Some other examples. In 1946, he designed the first electronic computer. And at the time, it was illegal to be gay in the United Kingdom, and that's why in 1952 he was convicted for having a relationship with a man. Alan, unfortunately, agreed to have a medical treatment designed to cure his homosexuality. Sadly, Alan lost his job, and as a result, he became depressed and died in 1954. Because he was arrested and because he was convicted, he could never work with the British government again. Thankfully, this homophobic law was abolished in 1967 and Alan received a royal pardon in 2013. However, it is very sad that because of this law, more than 60,000 men in the United Kingdom were arrested and convicted. What is the difference between the simple past and the present perfect? How are the sentences in the present perfect different? We have three types of actions for the present perfect. The first one is life experiences or experiences or activities that happened in the past, but we don't know exactly when these actions or activities happened. And we remember that we use ever to ask people about life experiences, and we use never when we want to say that there is something we have never done. Let's see the examples. Have you ever seen the movie The Enigma, one of the movies about Allan Turing? No, I have never seen it. Or, have you ever met a famous mathematician? No, I've never met one. We also use the present perfect for actions that started in the past and continue to the present. For example, engineers have studied the work of Alan Turing since the 1970s to learn about the Enigma. In the 70s, the documents related to the war and the work of Alan Turing were published, and people could learn about what Alan Turing had done. And since then, engineers started studying Alan Turing's work, and they are studying it now. That's why we use the present perfect. Engineers have studied the work of Alan Turing since the 70s. Technology has progressed immensely thanks to Alan Turing's achievements, and scholars have recognized his importance for modern science since the 70s. At some point in the past, Alan Turing made a contribution and technology started progressing, and it still progresses now. That's why we use the present perfect. And at some point, scholars or people from the universities recognize how important Alan Turing was, and they still recognize it now. That's why we use the present perfect, because the activity started happening in the past but still happens now. And we also use the present perfect to talk about repeated activities in the past when the person is alive. Well, Alan Turing is not alive now, but so we're going to use ourselves as examples because we are alive. I have read 4 books related to Alan Turing, and I have also watched 2 movies and 3 documentaries about his life. This is a repeated activity in the past, but do we know when it happened? No, we don't know when it happened. So we use the present perfect. I have read 4 books and I have watched 2 movies. Unfortunately, only 4 countries in the world have banned or prohibited conversion therapy for LGBT people: Taiwan, Malta, Ecuador, and Brazil. The rest of the countries in the world have not banned conversion therapy. And finally, many students have talked about Alan Turing in their videos. This is an action that is repeated in the past. Do we know exactly when those students talked about him? No, but we know that it happened at some point in the past, and that is a repeated activity in the past. All right, so I hope you learned something about Alan Turing and that you can recognize the difference between the present perfect and the past simple. Now, tell me, why do you think Alan Turing was so important? What do you think is the impact that Alan Turing has had in our lives? Thank you very much. Let me know your comments and your questions, and remember to like this video.